Hi everyone, and welcome back to the ALMA certification training. In this session, we'll discuss several topics related to managing bibliographic records and the metadata they contain. This session is intended for staff users with the General System Administrator role, the Catalog Administrator role, or the Repository Administrator role. If you have not yet listened to the certification training introductory session, I suggest you do so before continuing, as it contains some useful information about the certification training in general. Similarly, you might find it helpful to review the functional training session on resource management fundamentals. I'm presenting this session from a live sandbox environment configured almost identically to your own sandbox. I encourage you to follow along in your sandbox environment. Feel free to pause the recording in order to try out some of the things I'm demonstrating. We are planning a live question and answer call following the certification training before the exam. So if you think of additional questions after the session today, please make note of them and submit them to your project team in preparation for that session. You may also want to search the ALMA online help for answers to your question. In this session, we're going to discuss three different elements relating to managing bibliographic metadata: normalization rules, merge methods, and match methods. Normalization rules are used to edit MARC 21 bibliographic or holdings records according to a predefined rule. You can use normalization rules to add, remove, or replace MARC fields. You can apply normalization rules to individual records or to sets of records. Merge methods are used to combine or merge two records into one. Merge methods allow you to define how the records are merged, which fields will be kept, which will be overwritten, etc. Next, we'll take a look at match methods. ALMA can search the repository for duplicate records, or for records in the repository which match an imported record. Match methods allow you to choose how a match should be defined, for example by ISBN, ISSN, or other unique identifier. Each of these three elements, normalization rules, merge methods, and match methods, can be used in each of four different contexts: when working with a single record in the metadata, when importing bibliographic records via an external search resource, when importing bibliographic records via OCLC connection, either the connection client or the connection web interface, and finally when importing records in batch via an import profile. We'll take a look first at each of the three elements, and afterwards how to implement those elements in each of these four contexts. Normalization rules allow you to make changes to bibliographic or holdings records based on predefined rules and conditions. Rules can perform the following actions on bibliographic records: remove fields and subfields, add fields and subfields, replace fields, subfields, and indicators with other fields, subfields, and indicators, or replace or add text in subfields. Actions can be conditional or not. For example, replace text ABC with XYZ in MARC 650 subfield A, or replace text ABC with XYZ in MARC 650 subfield A only if MARC 049 has subfield A with the text OCM. Normalization rules are configured in the metadata editor. You must have the Catalog Administrator role in order to configure these. Opening the metadata editor, we'll see on the left side, at the bottom, the Rules tab. Clicking on that, we'll see the Normalization Rules folder. There may be two subfolders, Private and Shared. The private folder contains normalization rules that have been created by your user and saved as private. Only your user will see those normalization rules. If any normalization rules have been created by other users and saved as private, you won't see them here. The shared folder contains all normalization rules that have been created either out of the box or by any other user and saved as shared. Any user can use these, edit them, and delete them. Each normalization rule has several different options. Clicking on the rule, we see the menu, which contains, first of all, the Edit link, which allows us, of course, to edit the content of the specific rule. The delete link, of course, would delete the normalization rule. Duplicate allows us to use the existing normalization rule as a template for creating a new normalization rule. The Properties link opens the Properties window of the normalization rule, where we can see the name and description of the rule, as well as whether the rule is private or shared, and whether or not it's enabled. We can see the user and date during which the rule was created and updated. Notice that a rule, once it's been shared, cannot be changed back to private. Opening the private rule in Properties, we'll see that we can update this rule to shared. If we were to save this rule, it would be removed from the private folder and placed into the shared folder. To create a new normalization rule, click on File, New, and Normalization Rules. We get the Properties pop-up window in which we enter the name and description and decide whether we want this rule to be private or shared, and whether or not we want the rule to be enabled. In addition, we can use an existing rule as a template to create a new rule, or simply modify that existing rule. Alma provides, out of the box, a number of different snippets that can be added to the rules. Under the Edit menu, go to Add Rule and select a snippet. Snippet is simply a generic template for the kind of rule that you want to add. Notice that the rule that we're looking at, in fact, any rule can contain more than one rule statement. Each rule statement begins with the word rule and ends with the word end. The specific syntax and many examples for normalization rules are contained in the online help, and I refer you to the online help for configuring and customizing your own rules. My suggestion when creating a new rule is to use the existing rules as templates and update them to create your customized rules. We will take a look at a particular rule in more depth in order to illustrate the following demonstration. By opening a bibliographic record in edit mode in the metadata editor, we can preview the effects of a rule that we may be working on. Click on the split screen icon, select the right panel, and then select the rule that you would like to work on in edit mode. Here we see the rule, and here we see the bibliographic record. By clicking the preview button, we can see how this rule will act on the open bibliographic record. Afterwards, we'll have the option to modify the rule in order to achieve our objectives. Before we demonstrate this, I'd like to take the opportunity to go through this particular rule in order to describe some of the syntax to give you a more general idea of how rules can be configured and work. The first line contains the word rule, indicating that this is a new rule statement, and then a brief description of the effects of this rule. This is free text, and you can enter whatever you like. However, the description here tells us that this particular rule is designed to add a subfield H to the 245 field in the MARC record and populate that subfield with the word video if the record meets certain criteria. The criteria of the record, the criteria of the rule can be seen more specifically in the body of the rule itself. The first condition for this rule to apply is that the leader field of the bibliographic record in position 6, beginning in position 6, for one position, which is to say only position 6, contains the letter G. The second condition for this rule to apply is that the 008 field, beginning in position 35, for 3 positions, in other words, positions 35, 36, and 37, contain the letters E and G. These are our 2 conditions, and if our bibliographic record meets these conditions, then we would expect the actions of the rule to apply to that record. The actions of the rule will add the word video in square brackets to the 245 subfield H in the bibliographic record if the bibliographic record currently does not have a subfield H in tag 245. Examining now our bibliographic record to see if it meets the criteria of our rule, we'll notice that the leader field does in fact contain a letter G in position 6, that the control field 008 does indeed contain the letters E and G in positions 35, 36, and 37. And scrolling down to the 245, we'll notice that it does not yet contain a subfield H. Therefore, when applying our rule, we would expect that a 245H would be added to the bibliographic record. Clicking on Preview, we can check our assumption. Indeed, as we see, the rule successfully added subfield H containing the word video in square brackets to the 245. At this point, we can choose to save these changes by clicking Apply Changes, or clicking back to Normalization Rules in order to further update the normalization rule. This is a useful method when working with normalization rules in edit mode. However, this is not a particularly efficient method for applying normalization rules to bibliographic records. Rather, for normalization rules that have already been saved as processes, you can select from the Edit menu under the Enhance the Record link any of the normalization rules that have been saved as processes and apply them to the open bibliographic record. The normalization rules that we see here are currently not saved as processes, necessarily speaking. In order to save any of these rules as a process, we need to go to the Resource Management Configuration menu. Under the Metadata Configuration link in the Cataloging submenu, we'll go to the MARC 21 bibliographic. Normalization rules can also be applied to holdings records, but for our demonstration, we'll use bibliographic. Go to the Normalization tab, and here we see a link. Here we see a list of all of the normalization rules that have already been configured as part of a normalization process. We're going to create a new normalization process. Giving a name and description, and clicking on Next brings us to the next screen of the wizard. Here we see a list of the possible processes that we can use for configuring this normalization rule as a process. We're going to select Marked Rule Normalization and click Add to Selection. That will add the Marked Rule Normalization process to our selected processes. We move on to the next screen of the wizard, and from here we see a list of the normalization rules that we saw previously in the metadata editor. By selecting any of the rules here and clicking Save, we'll now have created a new normalization process which will apply the normalization rule that has been associated with this process. Going back now to the metadata editor and opening our bibliographic record, we'll be able to apply this new normalization process to the record without having to open the split screen and then opening the normalization rule in edit mode. Notice here that our new normalization process appears. In addition to appearing here, by virtue of having associated the normalization rule with the process, we can also run the normalization rule as a process on a set of records. Here we see the normalization process that we've created, and we'll be able to select a predefined set in order to apply that normalization rule, which is now associated with the process, to the entire set of records. Associating a normalization rule with a process has other benefits as well, which we'll see a bit later in the presentation. If you've got any questions about normalization rules, please feel free to pause the recording now and make note of them. Or if you'd like to practice any of the things that I've demonstrated, please take this opportunity. I'd like to go on now to a discussion of merge methods. If ALMA identifies matching bibliographic records, you can choose to merge the matching records into a single record. Merge methods define how matched records are merged. Merge methods are similar to normalization rules regarding configuration, syntax, and what they can do. The primary difference, of course, is that normalization rules work on a single record without reference to any other record, whereas merge methods require two records which have been identified as matching each other. Merge methods can combine the two records into a single record, keeping some fields from each record, or overwriting one of the records completely. The merge method acts on the record defined as the preferred record. Merge methods remove, add, and or replace fields in the preferred record with the values from the non-preferred record. Which record is preferred depends on the scenario. For import profiles and OCLC connection, the preferred record is the local record, the record that's already saved in the repository. For external search resources, the preferred record is the incoming record. Although the same merge method can be configured for use in import profiles as well as in external resources, for example, depending upon your objective, you may not get the same results. You may need two different merge methods, one for use with an import profile and the other for use with an external search resources, in order to achieve the same results. This is precisely because the definition of the preferred record is different in each of these scenarios. Merge methods are configured in the same place as the normalization rules. In the metadata editor, in the Rules tab, in the Merge Rules folder. Notice here too, we have two different folders, one for rules that have been created by my user, and the other for rules that have been created by other users or for out-of-the-box rules. We have the same menu possibilities here as we had for the normalization rules. Edit opens the rule in edit mode. Delete will remove the rule. Duplicate allows us to use the existing rule as a template for creating a new rule. Or properties shows us essentially the same properties that we saw in the normalization rules, the name and description of the rule, as well as whether it's private or shared, and enabled or not, and the user that created the rule and updated the rule, as well as the date in which it was created or updated. Notice that just like in the normalization rules, rules that have been saved as shared can no longer be privatized. Rules that are private can, of course, be changed to shared, but once saved, will be removed from the private folder, added to the shared folder, and cannot be claimed back by any user as private. To create a new merge rule, go to the File menu, New, Merge Rules. Here we see the properties pop up that we just saw with the existing rules. Like normalization rules, merge rules can contain more than one rule statement. And like normalization rules, we also have a snippet that can be added as a template, a generic template for creating a new rule. Notice, of course, that you'd need to fill in the blanks here in order to make an active rule. Like normalization rules, we have an extensive selection of syntax and examples in the online help. Rather than going to specific syntax with those rules, I'd refer you to the online help. As with normalization rules, my suggestion to you when creating new merge rules is to use the existing rules as templates to customize your existing rules, or use the online help examples for creating your own rules. What I would like to do is to describe each one of the 4 out-of-the-box merge methods that you can see here. The first method is the conditional subject headings. This merge method replaces all fields except for the 001, the 035, the 900s, the 650s, and the 700s. In other words, all fields in the preferred record will be replaced by the fields in the non-preferred record, except for any of the fields that are listed here. Afterwards, the merge rule will add any MARC 650 fields from the non-preferred record to the preferred record, and then add any MARC 700 fields from the non-preferred record to the preferred record. Notice that this rule has a number of different actions. This is characteristic of merge rules generally. Most merge rules will have more than one action. The actions will be executed in the order in which they appear within the rule statement, and therefore be careful when configuring your own rules that you're going to execute the desired actions in the desired order. The next out-of-the-box merge rule actually does nothing at all. It will preserve the preferred record as is. This is a useful merge rule for several different scenarios. The next out-of-the-box merge rule will overlay all fields in the preferred record except for local fields. As we can see, the first action statement is to replace all fields in the preferred record with the tags from the non-preferred record, except for the 001, the 035, and any 900 fields in the preferred record, which will be preserved. The next action in the rule will replace the 035 unless the 035 in the preferred record has first indicator 9 and second indicator 0, blank. The last of the out-of-the-box merge rules will add the MARC 245, the main title, from the non-preferred record to the preferred record if the preferred record does not yet have a MARC 245. Similarly, the 035 from the non-preferred record will be added to the preferred record only if the preferred record does not yet have a 035. Afterwards, all fields in the preferred record will be replaced with fields from the non-preferred record except for the 245, the 035, and the 001 in the preferred record, which will be preserved. Lastly, the rule will replace the 035 in the preferred record when the 035 subfield A does not contain the OCLC prefix unless the 035 has first indicator 9 and second indicator blank. We don't have a preview method for the merge rules the way that we did for the normalization rules. However, I would like to demonstrate the rule, and you will see that there is a preview option. Let's go back to our bibliographic record. Opening it in edit mode, we're going to search the repository for any records that match this record. We can search for matches in the repository from the menu Tools, MARC 21 Bibliographic, Find Matches, or with the keyboard shortcut of Control-M. Clicking here, Alma is now searching the repository for records which match the open record. Indeed, a matching record was found. We now have a number of different options for how to proceed. We can view the existing record, the matching record, or we can open it in edit mode. If the matching record has not yet been saved to the repository, for example, in the case of an import from an external search resource, we could choose to copy that record into the repository and then use it to overlay the saved record on the left. Or we could save that record and merge it with the existing record. Before merging the records, we could see a merge preview, a preview of what the final result will look like. In other words, there's a merge rule that's been configured for use in this scenario. And by clicking the merge preview link, we'll see a preview of how the merge rule that's been configured will act on the final product. Here indeed we can see the results of that merge. We can choose to copy the record and merge it, or go back to our list of results. I'd like to go on now to a discussion of match methods. As we've just seen, Alma allows you to identify duplicate records, or records which match each other. Match methods determine how a match is defined. There are two use cases for match methods. The first, as we've demonstrated, when a bibliographic record is open in the metadata editor, Alma can search the repository for records that match the open record. The second and primary use case for match methods is when importing records, either via import profile, external search resources, or OCLC connection. Alma can search your institution zone for records that match the incoming record. If a match is found, you can choose what to do, as we've seen. Reject or save the incoming record, use it to overlay the existing record, or merge the existing and incoming records using merge methods. Alma's match methods should not be customized. Rather, you select the appropriate out-of-the-box match method for the situation or import method for which you need. Parallel lists of profiles for serials and non-serials exist out of the box. Out of the box, there are 7 different match methods for serials and 7 for non-serials. Here we see the first 3 match methods that are available out of the box for serials. I'd like to describe each one of them and then say a few words about how some of them compare. The first method is the 001 to MMSID match method. This match method compares the content of the MARC 001 of the incoming record against the MMSID of records in the repository. This match method was developed especially for the scenario in which records have been exported from Alma, edited in some external editor, and then re-imported into Alma in order to overlay the existing records. The export job takes the MMSID of the exported records and writes it to the MARC 001 of those records, so that upon re-importing those records, the MARC 001 of the incoming records serves as a match point against the MMSID of the existing records, so that those records can be matched and the incoming records can be used to overlay the existing records. The next match method is the unique OCLC identifier match method. This matches records based on any one of the following prefixes in the 035 field, either subfield A or Z, regardless of any zero padded data. In other words, any zeros that may appear in the 035 after the prefix will be collapsed and normalized for matching purposes. Here you see a list of the 4 different prefixes which are recognized by Alma for purposes of this match method. In other words, all of these prefixes are considered to be the same for matching purposes. If the existing record has one prefix and the incoming record has a different one of these prefixes, they will nevertheless be identified as matching if the numbers that follow those prefixes are identical. I'd just like to emphasize here that for the first prefix, the parentheses are considered part of that prefix. The next match method is the 035 other system identifier match method. This is a more general match method based also on the 035 field. I'd like to show you now a table that compares these two different match methods, the unique OCLC identifier and the 035 other system identifier match methods. Here we see a table which contains the 035 subfield A of the existing record on the left, the 035 subfield A of the incoming record in the next column. To the right, we have the results of applying the unique OCLC identifier match method, and in the far right column, the results of matching of applying the 035 other system identifier as the match method. As we can see from the highlighted rows, the results of these two different match methods will be different in these three different cases. The first case in the second row is when the prefix of the 035 subfield A is different from the incoming record from the existing record. Because they're different, the general 035 other system identifier match method identifies these records as not matching. However, because these different prefixes are both recognized OCLC prefixes, the unique OCLC identifier match method identifies these two records as a match. In the seventh row, we see another case in which these two different match methods differ. Here, the 035 subfield A of the incoming record is identical to the 035 subfield A of the existing record, and therefore the more general 035 other system identifier method identifies these records as a match. However, despite the fact that they're identical, since the prefix is not a recognized OCLC prefix, using the unique OCLC identifier match method would identify these records as not matching. Similarly, in the last row, the input and the output, the incoming record and the existing record, have identical 035 subfield A's, and therefore the more general 035 other system identifier match method identifies these records as matching. However, because the records don't have a OCLC prefix in the 035 subfield A, the more specific unique OCLC identifier match method identifies these records as not matching. There are 4 more match methods that are available in ALMA, 7 altogether. The LCCN serial match method matches the incoming and existing records based on the 010 subfield A, or the Library of Congress call number field, only. The next method uses the ISSN in the 022 and the 024 and the 035 as potential match methods. If any one of these fields match in both records, this match method will identify the records as matching. Alternatively, the ISSN match method uses the 022 exclusively as the match point, and therefore only if these fields are identical in the incoming and existing records will this match method identify the records as matching. Finally, we have a fuzzy match method, which uses a weighted system to compare several different bibliographic fields, including the IDs and the dates, normalized title, country of publication, pagination, publisher, and main entry, in order to determine whether the two records are matching or not. If these fields are sufficiently similar to each other, the total weighting of this match method will reach the threshold and be identified as matching. If not, then not. Just as for serials, also for non-serials, we have the same match methods, except for these two, which differ for the non-serials than for the serials. In the non-serials, rather than using the ISSN, we use the ISBN. And so, the first match method you see here will compare either the ISBN or the 024 or the 035 between the incoming record and the existing record. And if any of these fields match, this method will identify them as matching records. If the ISBN match method is used, then only the 020, in other words, the ISBN field, will be used for determining whether the records match or not. All of the other match methods that are available for the non-serials are the same as those that we saw for the serials. We've seen now the normalization rules, the merge methods, and the match methods. I'd like to discuss now how we can implement each one of these elements in each of 4 different contexts. First, when working with a single record in the metadata editor. Next, when importing bibliographic records via an external search resource. Third, when importing bibliographic records via OCLC connection, either the connection client or the connection web interface. And finally, when importing records in batch via an import profile. In the metadata editor, as we saw, normalization rules are implemented from the Edit menu, Enhance the Record, and here we have a list of all of those normalization rules that have been associated with processes and are therefore available for use here within the metadata editor. Match methods for the metadata editor, as we saw when we ran our demonstration and found the matching record, are configured in the Resource Management Configuration menu in the General submenu under the Other Settings link. Here we'll see 2 different match method parameters, the non-serial match profile and the serial match profile parameter. The values that you see here are the out-of-the-box values. These happen to be using the fuzzy match method that we described, the weighting method that will compare those various bibliographic fields. In order to update the value of the match parameter for non-serial or serial, click on Customize. This field now becomes writable, and enter the value for the match method that you would like to use. The syntax for these match methods is shown here. Here we have the syntax for the serial match profile. I've highlighted the last 2 methods because these methods are, generally speaking, not particularly useful for use in the metadata editor, which is, after all, what we're implementing right now. The syntax for the non-serial match methods is here. You'll be able to download this presentation, say have this information, from the Learning Center course site. Merge methods are configured in the are implemented in the metadata editor, also from the Other Settings table. Here we see the merge method parameter and the out-of-the-box value for that parameter, which uses, in fact, one of the out-of-the-box merge methods. In fact, any merge methods that have been customized will not be available for use with the metadata editor. Rather, only the out-of-the-box merge methods can be entered here. The syntax for these merge methods is available on the online help, but is also seen here in the presentation. Here we see the 4 different out-of-the-box merge methods that are available for use in the metadata editor. simply copy this text and enter it in the box here. After making your changes, of course, you need to click Save. That's how we implement normalization rules, merge methods, and match methods in the metadata editor. For the external search resources, we go to the Resource Management Configuration menu and click on the External Search Resources link in the Search Configuration submenu here at the top. Opening one of the external search resources in edit mode will show us fields for selecting the normalization process. Remember the rules that we've already associated with processes, which are now available not only in the metadata editor and the process for running on a set of records, but by virtue of having associated that rule with a process, we can now select it for use here with the external resource. Merge methods can also be selected from the drop-down here. Here we see the 4 out-of-the-box merge methods. However, if we had configured or customized any additional merge methods in the metadata editor and saved them to the shared folder and enabled them, they would also be available here in this drop-down. The match methods for the external search resources are configured in the same place as the match method for the metadata editor, namely in the Other Settings link under the Resource Management Configuration menu. The match methods that we entered here for non-serial and for serial will be used not only for the metadata editor, but also for the external search resource. Implementation of these configuration elements in the OCLC connection takes place in the OCLC connection integration profile, which is under the General Configuration menu. In the Integration Profiles link under the External Systems submenu, if we open the OCLC configuration in edit mode, in the Actions tab we'll see where we can select the normalization rule, again the rule that's been associated with a process. We'll be able to select the merge method for serial records as well as for non-serial methods. And we'll also see the 4 out-of-the-box merge methods. If any match methods or merge methods had been customized, I'm sorry, not for match methods, we're restricted to the 7 out-of-the-box match methods. However, if any merge methods had been customized, they would appear here in this drop-down. Finally, we can implement these 3 elements, the normalization rules, the merge methods, and the match methods, in the import profile. Import profiles are configured under the Resource Management Configuration menu in the Import Profiles link in the Record Import submenu. Import profiles are discussed in a separate session, but I'd like to show you here how we can simply implement the configuration elements that we've been describing in this session. Clicking on Normalization and Validation tab will show us the field where we can select the normalization rule that's been associated with a process. This is the normalization rule which will be applied to all records contained in the import file which are being imported using this import profile. In the Match Profile tab, we can select the appropriate match method for serial and non-serial, as well as the merge method should we decide that this import profile will merge any matching records. By way of summary, I'd like to show you a table of these different implementations. Here on the left, we have the 3 different configuration elements that we've been discussing: the normalization rules, the match methods, and the merge methods. Across the top, we have the four different contexts in which these three elements are implemented: the metadata editor, the external search resources, the OCLC connection, and the import profiles. As we saw, normalization rules are configured in each one of those places through the user interface. For the match methods, we must configure the Other Settings menu, the Other Settings table, for the match method of the metadata editor, which will be the same match method used when importing via the external search resources. However, when using the OCLC connection or importing via profiles, we can select a match method in the user interface. Finally, for the merge methods, when implementing with the metadata editor, we configure that in the Other Settings menu. However, for all three of the other contexts, the import scenarios, we select the merge method from the user interface. In this session, we discussed normalization rules. Normalization rules are used to edit MARC 21 bibliographic records according to a predefined rule. Rules allow you to add, remove, and replace fields, subfields, and indicators, and add or replace text in fields and subfields. Normalization rules can be applied to a single record, for example, via the metadata editor, or to a set of records by incorporating the normalization rule into a process. Once associated with a process, the normalization rules can be used with the metadata editor, the external search resources, import profiles, and OCLC connection. Merge methods are used primarily when importing bibliographic records, either individually via external search resources or OCLC connection, or in bulk via an import profile. If one or more matching records already exist in the repository, you can choose to merge the imported record with one of the existing records. Merge methods define how these records are merged. Merge methods act on what we call the preferred record. When importing via import profile or OCLC connection, the preferred record is the local record. When importing via external search resources, the preferred record is the incoming record. The implication of this, of course, is that the same merge method may yield different results depending on how the record is imported. Finally, we discussed match methods. When importing records via import profile, external search resources, or OCLC connection, Alma can search the repository for records that match the incoming record. When a bibliographic record is open in the metadata editor, Alma can search the repository for records that match the open record. You cannot customize the match profiles, but you can select which match profile to use. The out-of-the-box match methods include a fuzzy method, methods based on one or more unique identifiers, such as ISBN or ISSN, the LC call number, OCLC, or other system identifier, as well as a special method that allows you to re-import exported records and potentially merging or overlaying the original record with the re-imported record. Let's take a look now at a few review questions. Question number 1. Mary is the head of cataloging. She is excited about moving to Alma, but concerned about the impact on her catalog and her workload going forward. In her old system, for every record she imported, she manually added a local field indicating the external resource from which she took the record. What can you tell Mary to reassure her? A. She can continue the same practice in Alma. B. She can automate this process in Alma using normalization rules. Or C. All of the above. The correct answer to this question is C. All of the above. Of course, Mary could continue her labor-intensive activities by manually adding the fields to the new records. However, Alma allows her to automate this process by using normalization rules. Question number 2. Mary's team does a lot of copy cataloging. She is concerned that importing records via external search resources will overwrite her local 650 fields. what would you suggest to Mary? A. Copy any 650 fields from the old record and paste them into the new record. B. Use a merge method to keep her local 650 fields in the new record. Or C. Use a normalization rule to add her local 650 fields to the new record. The correct answer to this question is B. Mary could manually copy the 650 fields from the old record and paste them into the new record, but that's not a very efficient suggestion. Answer number C wouldn't really work, since Mary would not be able to configure a specific normalization rule to cover all of the various scenarios of local 650 fields. The correct answer to the question is B. Mary could configure a merge method that would allow her to preserve her existing 650 local 650 fields in the new record. Question number 3. Mary configured merge methods to use for copy cataloging via external search resources. But when she uses the same merge methods with her batch record import profiles, they do not behave as expected. What can you tell Mary to help her out? A. Merge methods don't work with batch imports. B. You can't use the same merge method for both things at the same time. Or C. Because the preferred record differs, you may need to create distinct merge methods. The correct answer to this question is C. Merge methods do work with batch imports. As we saw, you can implement the merge methods, either the out-of-the-box methods or the customized methods, in the user interface for the import profile. And, in fact, you can use the same merge method simultaneously for import profiles as well as external search resources. However, because the preferred record differs in each of these scenarios, in one case it's the local record, and in the other case it's the incoming record, the results of using that same merge method may differ, which explains, of course, what Mary's experiencing. Therefore, the correct answer to this question is C. Because the preferred record differs, Mary may need to create distinct merge methods. Last question. Mary wants to export a set of records in order to update them in an external editor, and then import them back into Alma. Of course, she wants to ensure that the imported records will match up with the existing records and update them with the changes. Which match method should Mary use? A. It depends on whether she is importing serial or non-serial records. B. 001 to MMS ID match method. C. Unique OCLC identifier match method. Or D. 035 other system identifier match method. The correct answer to this question is B. The 001 to MMS ID match method was developed especially for this scenario. It allows Mary to export her records and update them in an external editor, and then re-import them knowing that she'll be able to overlay the original records with the new records. This is the method that's used whether you're importing serial records or non-serial records, and so answer A would not be correct. Similarly, answers C and D would not help Mary with this particular scenario, since the records may not have a unique OCLC identifier, or the editing process may have changed the 035 fields. So the correct answer to this question is B. This is exactly the match method for this scenario. This concludes our session today. Thank you very much for your participation. If you do have any questions, please make note of them and submit them to your Ex Libris project team in advance of the question and answer session. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful day.